What's going on, everybody? We got a great podcast for you today. We've had all kinds of different celebrities and different people that have gone from everything from winning the Alone show to being on the Discovery Channel. And today we've got a brand new one. We've never had someone that was an undercover boss, but we do have it today. Jeff Dudan is an Undercover Boss alumni. He was in Season 8, Episodes 1 through 4. You can check him out. Homefront Brands, and today we're going to talk to him about all kinds of things, starting with fishing in marathon. Here we go with Jeff Dudan.
I am Jeff Dudan, CEO of Homefront Brands, brand builder, podcaster, and Undercover Boss, and this is the Tom Rowland Podcast. Jeff,
good to see you, man. I enjoyed being on your show the other day, and I'm happy to have you on mine.
It's great to do a back-to-back like this because it feels like a continuation of the same conversation.
Yeah, it does. Although I'm going to dig into what you've done. You've had quite a career, and what's interesting to my audience is that that career has led you to fish regularly in the Florida Keys marathon. That's what these people will be most interested in at first on the surface. So how did you find marathon, and how did you get down there to start fishing?
So I started my career in South Florida in 1992, helping the people recover from Hurricane Andrew. Mm-hmm. And when you're a 23, 24-year-old project manager and you're working all week and helping the people recover, and then it comes to Friday, you just head down to the Keys. So we would get as far as we could and stop wherever we wanted to and go to the Tiki Bar and go to Isla Mirada, and then sometimes we'd go all the way to Key West. But spent a lot of time down there during that time, and then as I had a family and kids, I was just like, you want to take them to the things that you experience. So we made it a regular stop for us.
Cool. And over the years, you've gotten into both offshore and inshore fishing. We learned on your podcast. Which do you like best?
I don't. Well, I will say that saltwater is better than freshwater. Although, so the fishing that I did growing up, I grew up in Chicagoland. And so if we had a weekend, we'd go up to Wisconsin or Minnesota, but once a year it was so affordable. They had these camps up in Canada that you could drive to. Mm-hmm. And no indoor plumbing, outhouses, but you drive about 5.5 hours into Ontario. We used to go to a place called Red Lake. And it was, I think it was Great Bear Lodge or something like that. And we would drive to the end of the road, and then I think the last 45 minutes was a gravel road, and you'd end up just at the end of it. And then they'd come out on ATVs, they'd drive you another mile into the camp, and you'd have these little Lund boats that were 16 and 18 feet. You'd have a 9.9 horsepower motor on the. If you were really lucky and you had a guide, they'd give you like a 14 horse. And then, and that's the fishing that I grew up doing. So we'd start in the morning.
Mostly northern pike and walleye and lake trout?
Yeah, we'd jig for walleyes in the morning typically. And then when we catch a half a dozen walleyes, we'd have those for shore lunch. And then we'd just throw the big buzz baits on, or rapalas or whatever it is. And then we'd just go thrashing for pike the rest of the day.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That I had an experience with my dad where I guess it was kind of for high school graduation, like around that time, and he took me to a place called Reindeer Lake, and Reindeer Lake is owned by somebody named Ken Gangler, or it was at that time, and we went up there and just had an incredible trip, like you're talking about, and when we were finished fishing with the guides, they let us take the boats out.
Yes.
Like I was 17 years old, right? Like, and I had no idea what I was doing, but we would take the boats out, and that turned out to be the best part of the whole trip was going out there. And it was my first time that I had experienced going so far north that it doesn't get dark almost at all in the summertime. And we would just, as a young kid, just so excited about fishing. I'd be out there fishing at 2:00 in the morning. And I remember bringing a big northern pike in and showing my dad. He was asleep in the bed. I'm like, look what I caught.
Yeah.
But that trip was so meaningful to me becoming a professional fisherman. It was just, I don't know what that ignited a fire in me that I was just like, that's amazing. There were a couple of years later where I didn't fish that much, and then went to college, and then that's where I was, that's when it really started for me. But that trip was really something. There's a lot of incredible fishing up there in Canada.
Yeah.
I'd love to go back there and do that again.
Tom, I think we're living parallel lives because Reindeer Lake is in northern Saskatchewan.
Yeah, that's right.
And my dad passed away in 2020, and he was the one that always used to take us to Canada to go fishing. So, and I moved to the south, so I live in the south now. So if you really want to go to Canada, it's a lot easier for us to go to the Keys or the coast and do that kind of fishing rather than get all the way back up to Canada. So we just kind of stopped going. But last summer, I took both of my boys up to Reindeer Lake.
Did you?
And because I had taken my young son when he was 7, and we had gone maybe to Lake of the Woods or something like that, but we hadn't really gone and do like a big fly-in deal. So last year, we took some of my dad's ashes up there, and my 20-year-old and my 26-year-old, we went up there last summer, and we spent a week on Reindeer Lake, and we just absolutely slaughtered the big pike. It was
That's
unbelievable.
So cool to hear that it's still good, because it was great when I was there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was.
One of the things I remember too about that place is that they showed us how they kept the ice behind the lodge, and they had this hole dug there, and they would cut the lake ice, and then they would cover this hole with moss, and then they put the ice in there, and then cover it with moss, and then put another layer of ice on there, and then cover it with moss and put another layer of ice on there, and that would last them all summer. I just thought that was fascinating. I'm like, we're drinking? That's the ice that's in our drinks? And they're like, yeah. And I just, coming from the South, it's so weird to think that. I don't know. I just thought that was so cool. And then they showed us how you could get birch bark off the trees. And I remember sending my friend a birch bark postcard from Reindeer Lake. Of course, I sent it from Tennessee, but I got it at Reindeer Lake. It's a cool place.
Yeah,
cool
different,
place.
All kinds of different interesting things they have to do to survive. But we're at Black Bear, so yeah, they would go up during the winter. They would use a chainsaw, and they would cut blocks of ice out of the lake that were maybe 2 foot by 2 foot. Mm-hmm. They had a shed. It was above ground, so they would layer the bottom with the ice blocks, and then they would use sawdust, because they had a sawmill, because they made all their own cabins, they made their own tables, so they would take the sawmill sawdust and just layer it, then put another layer of ice, and it was depending on what time of year you went, was how tall it was in the shed. Yeah. And you would just go in there with your cooler and an ice pick, and you'd get some sawdusty ice in your cooler, and yeah, then it would last all summer long, which is crazy to think about.
I know, but what a great experience. Yeah. Reindeer Lake Lodge, or Reindeer Lake. I guess you might have gone to a different lodge up there, but still that was a massively huge lake. I mean, if you look at a map of Canada, it like sticks out. It's a huge lake. I mean, like really a big lake. But it's so full of lakes all up in there. It's just amazing. I guess that's where the glaciers just potholed that whole area. And that's what all that is. And I'm sure there's lakes up there that never get fished.
Yeah.
If you had a float plane, you could probably just bounce around and find all kinds of incredible stuff. That's cool.
It's unforgiving. Cool. The guides we had were local natives, and they were we had a guy named Crazy Johnny, which accurately named. And they capsized a boat one time, and they got stuck out there for a week. And even these guys that grew up out there, they just like, you can't find anything to eat. There's no little ground squirrel. Like they lost everything in the boat. But they got out on the land, and they had to walk for like a week till somebody actually picked them up. And man, they lost a lot of weight. I mean, plenty of clean water. But yeah, unless you can catch some fish, it's fish and bears.
You see shows like Alone.
Mm-hmm.
Are you a fan of that show?
I am.
Which is, I think for me, that's my favorite like survival show on TV. I don't know. It just seems really real, because some people don't make it very long, and then the people that do, they make some good choices. I mean, they really do. And but they did it at like a Canadian lake like that.
Yeah.
I think it was way west of there, but. They had a hard time, find anything to eat.
Have you had any survivalists on your podcast?
Yeah, I've had 2 winners of Alone here.
Okay.
I had Jordan Jonas, he won.
All right.
And then I had Clay Hayes. Both of those guys won Alone. And both very different individuals, both people that you would, if you were going to try to survive somewhere, you would want both of these people on your team.
Okay.
Very, very capable. Clay is like a bow hunter from Idaho, and he also spends a good amount of time in Florida. And I really hope that one day we get to go fishing together because he's very interested in that. And Jordan was a guy that he was so interesting. He, as a young man, went up and lived with this nomadic tribe that I guess they kind of followed the reindeer and rode reindeer and they like had this symbiotic relationship with reindeer. But I mean, he did all that. The survival on the show was like cake. He told me that when they came to tell him that it was over, he had just caught these 3 big fish, and he's like, "Oh well, what are we going to do with these fish? I'll just make lunch for the whole crew." And so he made lunch for the whole crew. Meanwhile, everyone else is starving to death.
Yeah.
But he was the one that got all the fat stolen. He had his fat rendered in a like a can that he had found, and this Wolverine kept coming in and stealing it, and that made him lose all kind. But he also shot a moose. Like both the people, like Clay shot something big, and Jordan shot something big. And then there was another guy that I've tried to get on, Rowland. I haven't been able to make contact with him, but he shot a muskox. And so pretty much every time that somebody wins that show, they have one big kill, and that kind of tends to help them. But the survivalists are cool kind of individuals. Very interesting.
Yeah, I've been reaching out to Bear Grylls. Haven't heard back. Bear, if you're listening.
Yeah. Well, I can introduce you to Clay Hayes and to Jordan Jonas, and they're interesting. You'll get in touch with Bear Grylls sometime. I don't have a connection to him, but he would be great. Love to have him on mine too.
Yeah.
All right, Jeff, we have this thing that I do here called the hot seat questions, and it's a way for me to get to know you a little bit better and a way for the audience to get to know you a little bit better, and it kind of leads into a lot of the things that we may end up talking about. So they're kind of either or questions, or kind of like would you rather, the would you rather game. So you ready to play this with me?
I am game.
Okay, favorite social media platform?
Instagram.
Do you answer every comment, or do you never look at them?
Answer some. That's not
favorite
a great question.
Fish.
Favorite fish?
Favorite fish to fish for?
Walleye.
Okay. Favorite fishing destination that you've been?
Isla Mirada.
You prefer college or pro football?
College.
Would you have a reptile as a pet?
Yes.
That's a very emphatic yes. Favorite, this will be interesting for you. Favorite job you've ever had?
Kitchen worker at a Mexican restaurant in 7th and 8th grade.
Nice. Interested in hearing more about that. Least favorite job you've ever had?
Kitchen worker at a Mexican restaurant. I was worked on a concrete crew in a basement 6 a.m. and shoveling concrete to the corners of it and digging out sump pits. That was tough. Very
tough. If you were going to try to survive on an island, what tool would you choose?
Knife.
Okay. Something you do every day that you can tell makes a difference.
Exercise.
Okay. Would you rather drive or fly?
Fly.
Which is more important, mindset or skill set?
Mindset.
What is Homefront Brands?
Homefront Brands is a property service franchise platform.
Chocolate or vanilla?
Vanilla.
Text or call?
Call.
1 million now or 10 million later?
1 million now. Tomorrow's promised to no one.
Interesting. The most challenging thing about your job today?
Not trying to do too much for too many people.
One thing you've changed your mind on in the last 2 years?
Retirement.
And you're going to or not going to?
I was thinking about it, but then we went all in. I've re-upped. I've re-enlisted.
Okay. All right. One thing you've learned in the last year that's made you money?
Who, not how.
Love it. We talked about that book before. A movie that makes you laugh?
Oh, I don't want to say this one. I'll just go with Caddyshack to be safe.
Okay.
Well, wait, Christmas Vacation.
Okay, both are good. A way that AI will change the future, in your opinion.
The rise of the smart creatives.
Okay. Can you share one quote that you think about often?
If it is to be, it's up to me.
Destination you like to visit?
Austria.
Is there a book that you've gifted more than once?
Yes.
What is it?
Discernment, my book.
There you go.
Because nobody will buy it.
Got it right here. I don't believe
There
it.
you go. It's unsellable, so I've got to get rid of these somehow. I overpurchased.
One piece of advice that you live by?
If you know what the right thing to do is, do that.
Okay. And then straight out of your book, define discernment.
Discernment is, it is an experiential, cumulative gain of models of thought over time that basically create wisdom. So it's your ability to make good decisions, experience-based decisions against a set of filters, and that improves. It's a cumulative asset that you refine and improve over the course of your life.
Okay, great. Awesome. That gets us started, and you do have a book called Discernment. It's right here. It came a little late, so I got to skim it, but I like it so far.
Thank you.
So why did you write a book about decision-making?
I've written 2 books, and I tend to write books when I think a season of my life is coming to an end. So the first book I wrote was something called Hey Coach, and I really participated in my kids' lives by coaching over 30 seasons of their different sports. A lot of football, a lot of baseball, some basketball. My daughter was a soccer player. I couldn't do much of that, but I tried. And, at the end of it, you develop these methods and means and philosophies around things. So I wrapped all that up into a book. I usually coach my kids up through middle school if they would have me at the middle school. And then Discernment I wrote in 2019, and it was immediately following the sale of my business at Vaniclean. I had built a business from 1994 and sold it in January 1st, 2019. And I really, you get reflective at that point in time. First of all, there's a vacuum of things that you no longer have to do. And, oh, by the way, you have to clean out the closet of your business, and you have to go through and clean things out and move out. And it just gets to be this really reflective time. And you find all of these pieces of work and journals and stuff that you used, but you've forgotten about for many years. And I was just like, I want to, I really, so much of what I do is just for my kids. I'm like, I want my kids to know I don't want them to know, hey, you built this great company to 240 locations and you sold it, and that's fine. That's, why we get to go to the Bahamas now. But, I wanted them to really understand what was underneath it, what was in my head, some of the struggles that you go through. And, they don't want to listen to you tell them these stories. So I figured I'd put it all in a book, and it's really targeted towards people that are at an inflection point in their life, people that are, maybe, and I think young people, if I knew all of this stuff when I was younger, I would have made better decisions. And, the quality of your decisions, it really impacts the quality of your life and the velocity of your business. So I found that a lot of young people in their 20s and they're starting in business, and parents give it to their kids, and their kids, you just get to imprint it on their kind of native brains at that point, and hopefully it'll be helpful to them. So I really just wanted for anybody that was interested, just to share kind of what I went through and what I learned as a result of it, and then put it in stories and models of thoughts so that it wasn't textbook. People could actually remember it and be triggered when they face that in their life. They'd be like, oh, I remember the story that Jeff went through, and this is similar, and maybe can inform their thinking.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you hope, I think, as far as your kids go too, is like maybe that they get some advice that would have helped you along. But, do you ever think about, like, I'm sure you do when you're reflecting on these things and writing a book about it, and you're trying to teach people, things that you wish you had known, or that if you had known, you would have made a different decision. But Sometimes I wonder about that, like mistakes that you've made and all those things lead you to right here. And you seem pretty happy about where you are right now. And so do I. Like I love where I am right now. And I know that it's accumulation of all of the things that have happened in my life that I have had control of, and some things that I didn't have control of or whatever. But there are certainly plenty of decisions that I look back on and go, that wasn't the best one. But I don't necessarily regret it because it led me to right here. And I like where I am right now. What do you think about that? Did you think about that when you were writing this book and when you're kind of at that place in your life?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a closed loop, because when you can take an objective view of yourself, and your ego's not out of shape, and you can be extrospective, meaning if you had a camera up in the corner of the room and you could objectively look at yourself, and your ego is not such that you can't even think about your failures, like that's when the real learning happens. And I think everything nearly is funny. So I enjoy, I laugh out loud sometimes thinking about the mistakes that I made and how stupid that was and how embarrassing that was. Like it doesn't bother me at all. And I think if you keep those things, you don't dwell on your mistakes, you don't dwell on your failures, but you certainly have to be able to access those as you continue to go forward through life and inform your thinking with those. And I just thought, I'm kind of an empath, so I'm kind of a high empathy guy. I don't mind being, a little self-deprecating a little bit. I think that helps a lot of times, we can all take ourselves a little bit too seriously, especially if you've had a little bit of success and then you've got people that are looking up to you, and, and I think it gets to people, I see it get to people's heads really quickly. And man, we're all struggling. We had at our previous Meet the Team Day, we had a veteran who was a Marine One chopper pilot. So he flew presidents. He flew 2 different presidents on Marine One in the helicopter. And, his comment to me was, you see these people but they're just husbands and fathers. And when you see them in their everyday life, they're no different than you or I. So if the president of the United States is just a regular guy when he's not behind the podium and not doing that, then man, I think we can not take ourselves a little bit too seriously either.
Right. Yeah, that's a good piece of advice in itself, of just not taking yourself too seriously and finding the humor. What's the quote that if you can't laugh at yourself, you're missing all the best material? Right?
I've never heard that, what I mean? But that's true.
Yeah, well, somebody said it. I don't know who. I'm not trying to steal it, but it's a good quote, and I think about that all the time. So one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, because on this podcast, one of the reasons I started this podcast was because I wanted to kind of really dig in on some people's stories of success or failure, but mostly of success, and so many of these people that I find interesting, whether they're a YouTuber or someone that has taken a different path and found success, is that somewhere along the line they had to kind of, it may have started as a side hustle, or it may have started as a part-time kind of thing, or maybe they just made this jump, and they had to decide at some point that either the side hustle that seemed kind of silly at first is now making more money than the real job that I have. That seems kind of easy. Like that's an easier one to kind of, okay, well, I'm going to jump over here and now I'm going to do it because I'm making more money. Sometimes people get to a place to where they're like, well, this other side hustle seems like there's some future here, but the only way that I'm going to find out is I'm going to have to quit my job over here and I'm going to have to jump in. And I love hearing like what it was that made people do that jump, and what, what it was that pulled the trigger on doing something like that. And for you, we were talking about Hurricane Andrew, and you were down there doing some cleanup, but then that turns into this whole other thing. Like, how does that happen to where you now turn that experience into something else, AdvantaClean? And I'm sure that somewhere along the line, you got to pull the trigger. You got to jump in with both feet. You've got to make this commitment that you're in. I'd love to hear about that.
With the benefit of hindsight, I've learned that inflection points typically have three things wrapped around them. Number one, there's people involved, people that you're either responsible for. You're making a decision based on your ability to be with your family, or people that you want to do something with. So people are one thing. The second is that there's usually some great opportunity at hand that you see, or at least that you're hopeful about. And then there's a risk of loss, because you can't generally get something better without finding something to give up. Because at some point you can't just keep putting apples in the basket, because the basket runs over. Mm-hmm. So I've had several of those burn the boat moments. And for whatever reason, and I think it's because I really didn't start with anything. And so many entrepreneurs start with less than nothing, and they just realize that, they're most entrepreneurs are, I'll say this and you can edit it out, but, I don't know what kind of family show this is, but most entrepreneurs are screwed into existence, meaning circumstances have led them to a point where they have to make a decision to feed themselves. Like you said, the side hustle, they got to make some money. And, for me, I went to a university in Iowa, and I essentially failed out. And I had to go back and live in my father's house at the time. And my parents had separated, and, nobody was there. So, it was, I tell my kids, of course, that it was apples, hot dogs, and government cheese. That's what we had in the house. And, and I'm like, well, I got $400 a semester to go to junior college here, but if that's it, that's pretty much what the level of support is. So I've got to make a go of this. So at that point, I deconstructed. I knew I was a decent football player, but I knew I was too slow. So I figured out how to take Taekwondo, because I knew that speed is power times flexibility, and I needed to be more flexible. So I got just enough speed to get a scholarship out of there and into App State, and I had other scholarships in the region, but I still would have probably been in and around the area. So I decided to go the farthest place I could, to a dry county on top of a mountain in Boone, North Carolina, to Appalachian State University. So, and my mom gave me her 1972 Buick LeSabre with the rag top that was ragged off, and I was a one-way drive, and I parked it in student housing on the top of the mountain, and I never went back to get it, because it was pretty much a one-way trip. I was glad to make it, and that's where I started. I had 5 T-shirts to my name, and 2 of them had profanity on it, because they were free from some bar thing. So that's, so when you start there, and it's like, well, starting a painting business in the summer there, to be able to stay there, it didn't feel like a big deal. It just felt like the next thing that I needed to do to make it to the, you make it to the next day, then you make it to the next week, then you make it to the next month. And then several points, when I bought my last partner out of the business in 2004, after 3 hurricanes crisscrossed Florida. And, we had receivables from the storm work, but we had a lot of loans and we had debt. So, I bought this guy out of a business that had no franchises, and we were $4 million in debt. I took all that debt on myself and said, if I can bet on myself, take that. So that was a burn the boat moment.
Yeah,
and then,
I would say that's a burn the boats moment.
Yeah. And then in 2005, coming back from Hurricane Katrina, and realizing that we were now working in the Caribbean and in the Gulf Coast and in Hawaii and Canada, and that I was never going to be home. So history, the way I grew up, history was going to repeat itself, because if I was never going to be home, you're going to come home one time, she's going to be gone, the kids are not going to know who you are, And so I made that decision. We had a nice business going, but I made the decision to sell all of our company stores under a franchise model. So I did that in 2006, 7, and 8 in Central Florida, Greenville, Spartanburg, South Carolina, and Charlotte. Burned the boats and said, we're going to sell all of our company stores. We'll keep our kind of commercial division, but we're going to commit to this franchising model because then I can be home, be engaged, present in my kid's life. And, I can have people come to me. And then the other thing that I realized, I've always had a heart of service. I love teaching people things. So, just the ability to have people come in and to do what you and I get to do is we have choice. Now, you get up at 4:30, I think I remember. I get up I get up early and I do what I need to do every single day, but it's my choice to do it.
Right.
And, so to be able to give people an option to have some piece of life like we get to have as entrepreneurs was incredible to me, to be a part of that in these franchise owners' lives, and to, build a great business that build a dream that's big enough where other people's dreams can fit inside of it, and then be a part of that. And sometimes it's really hard. Sometimes it's tough conversations. Sometimes things don't always go well. I mean, business is full contact, and for a lot of people, it's their first business. But I will tell you that if people stay the course and you stay in the game, you will ultimately win. So part of that encouragement is just encouraging people to, redouble their efforts, follow the plan, learn from the mistakes that you've made. You don't have a ton of money in this because you didn't build the business. You just bought a territory. So, you've got time to be able to do it. Now, the most important thing I'll say is I don't remember what your question was, but but it was something around that, right?
Yeah. Well, it's pretty much, how did you go from cleaning up after Hurricane Andrew to developing this Advanta Clean business? Like, you must have seen opportunity there.
Yeah.
And said, I can do this.
Yeah. So what I realized in really even back in 1992, that the hurricane response to Andrew was dominated by franchise players. So I said, well, I really like this space. And what appeals to me about it? You show up on people's worst day. Their house is flooded, it's burned, it's something like that. And then because I had a heart of service, I could help these people. I could save them. I could bring my education about the space and, tell them exactly that it was going to be okay. This is how it was going to happen. This is what the insurance company is going to try to do to you. So when they come out here, don't let them look in your, I can say this because I'm out of the industry now. Don't let them look in your spice cabinet and that you paid $10 a thing for and say, I'll give you $100 for all that, because you don't realize that you might have $1,000 worth of spices there. When they ask you, how much do you spend every day to eat? Don't give them you might say, well, let me give them a high number because that's what they're going to give me. Well, they're going to give you, there you say, well, I spend $300 a day, feeding our family. They're going to say, well, when you spend over that, we'll pay the difference, because that's what, So, yeah. We could give them little tips and things that would, not let them be disadvantaged in a way, and then just educate them and then take good care of them. So to me, that business was something that it really lit me up. And then kind of that immediate, it was always fresh every day, because you're responding to emergencies. Like, you get a call in 5 minutes and you're on $1 million fire at a laundry facility or something, and you're immediately solving problems and things are going, and you're going to make money, right? So it was a good fit for me, and I realized that I wanted to be in this industry, and I also realized that we couldn't franchise right away because we didn't have a working business model. So that we had to start a business to do it. But I always had my eye. I knew from 1995 because I tell a story about one of our project managers that said, "Hey, I should have a job here." And I said, "Well, sit down, Ray. Let's talk about it." And he told 4 hours. I've talked to him for 4 hours about what we were going to ultimately do, and we were going to franchise the business, and and what that would look like. So
did you know about the franchise model and how that worked at that point?
We hired our first franchise attorneys in 1997, got some education. I started the franchise company in 2000, and we just kind of franchised to our own locations there. But because our direct business was growing so fast, we were never able to allocate resources to it. And I made the mistake of not going out and finding anybody that had franchise experience to help us. We were pretty arrogant. We can figure this all out. We can do it ourselves. It was me being, very short-sighted inside of that. So until I was able to buy my last partner out in 2004, and he was not somebody that was really that interested in the franchising piece of it. He was a contractor type person. He didn't really want the risk of it. He didn't see it. He couldn't see the vision clearly, where I was just looking at it. And I was like, this is clearly what we need to do. And so I had always been pushing that initiative. And because I believed that was our destiny, the decisions that we made in our office in Charlotte, which was what I was responsible to run, all my partners stayed in the Florida office. We grew way past them. We innovated, we rebranded, we changed the service lines. Like, I was moving the business towards this franchise model that I saw. And then they were still running the original model, which was basically a general contractor, getting claims from insurance companies and stuff. So we were doing all the innovation and up here with the team that I had put together, and they were kind of just dragging along, and ultimately they didn't get along. So two of them wanted to leave. And then my third one, he was one of my great mentors. He just couldn't deal with the stress and the pressure of what was running that off of himself and trying to follow us into the business model. So when those hurricanes hit, and we did, I think, $4.2 million worth of water damage in like 90 days, it provided a good bit of capital for me to be able to buy him out and, take responsibility for the business and the debt, and gave him a nice soft landing, and allowed me to go on and make all the bad decisions independently of them.
I find franchise really interesting. And one of the things that I think is interesting about it is the systems and processes that must go into the franchise. And I don't know anything about franchise. Like, I'm just an observer. You go in a restaurant that is a chain. Like, I was in First Watch the other day. I like First Watch. They have good food. Yeah. And, I go to First Watch in Florida, go to First Watch in Tennessee, go to First Watch in Georgia. It's a very similar experience with a high quality of food, or at least I think it is. And I just like, how does this happen? How does someone be so, there must be a time where people are so strict about their systems and processes that it must happen this way. Everything must happen just like this little book says, or just like we've been trained. That seems to be, that, I don't know, for me, that's just not my strength, I think. And we kind of wing it a lot more around here. But that would be essential in the franchise. Did you have to do that in your franchise model? I mean, I'm assuming that everyone has to do that, because that's what a franchise is. Like, you're going to replicate what you've built here almost exactly here, right? So that someone that goes to another location or uses a different service or location is going to have a similar experience that they did up here, or exactly the same experience if everything is going well, right?
Tom, you're exactly right. Franchising has very little to do with whatever it is, the widget you're franchising. So if you looked at QSR, if you looked at McDonald's, if you looked at ServiceMaster, if you looked at our businesses, and you took the body of the car off, whatever the widget is, the chassis underneath of even different dissimilar types of market segments is very, very similar. One of the first things you would not probably think, that when we started Homefront Brands as a platform about 3 years ago, one of the biggest and earliest hires we made was a learning management executive from a company, 20 years experience, 5,000 seat learning management person to build.
So tell me, I mean, me and everyone else that's not in the franchise, what is learning management? What does that mean? What does that person teach?
It's every single thing that happens in the franchise that is in an online education, videos, pictures, tests, quizzes, scoring. It's a knowledge base, and it's also an education base, so that anybody who comes to work in who either joins the franchise or hires people to work in the franchise, that they have online training to show them exactly what to do. So we're an adult education company. We're a marketing and lead generation and conversion company through a call center. So we participate in the front end by generating leads and generating business. We're a technology company because we take all that data and we put it into the relative dashboard so that when you come in, we tell people, if you don't like radical transparency, then this is not a good place for you, because you're going to see all of your KPIs against all of your peers and your brand. Who's the best salesperson, who closes the best, what the cost of goods are. Because if you want incremental improvement, you want to be making sure that it's not qualitative, or it's not anecdotal conversations. How do you think you're doing? Well, I think we're doing good. It's got to be, numbers don't lie, people do. So, we had to build a large enterprise platform to make sure that we could serve the franchise owners up the data that they need to make informed decisions about incremental improvements. Try to pick up half a point here or 3/4 of a point there. So it's technology, it's learning management, it's marketing, it's call center conversion. It's none of it has to do with whatever service is getting provided out there.
Right.
And that's the when people try to franchise their business, 90% of franchisors fail within 12 years. There's over 4,000 actively growing franchise brands. The top 20% of those get all the activity and are the ones that are really growing, and then the rest of them are cycling in and out of business because they think, hey, it's like the worst thing to do is, if you like to cook, is open a restaurant, because there's nothing to do with that, So, it's a different business model. And brand standards and consistency are absolutely paramount, because if we have a customer that's in Oklahoma City and now they move to Austin, Texas, and they want to get the same service done, that they can expect to have the same booking app on their phone, that they can have the same experience, and people come out and even say the same things. I mean, how great is it at Chick-fil-A when people just say, "My pleasure"? I saw a little thing on the internet, which I think is going to be very popular one day. I saw a little thing on the internet, it took them 6 years to get the "my pleasure" statement into the Chick-fil-A system, to get them to adopt, everybody to adopt, to use that. So if you think about it, you've got all these different business owners out there. You're going for consistency, but you have all these different business owners that have different experiences. They come from different careers, they're different ages. They have all of this stuff, and you're trying to get them all to basically follow the plan, but yet they're not employees. So they do have great latitude, especially in a service business that's performed in people's homes and businesses. They have great latitude in the way that they execute the model, the way that they lead, the way that they manage. So it's a negotiation, and so we try to put guardrails up. We use technology to make sure that the systems are, a bulletproof and foolproof to the greatest extent we can. But it still comes down to that owner, their leadership ability, their ability to get people in the community. To use them. They have to show up in their community in a big way. All the best business owners in the community are usually involved in charities. They're helping out. They're visible, and then they got to get employees to join them and stay with them and all of that. So there's a lot on these franchise owners. So what we try to do is anything that can be centralized that makes their businesses easier to run. We take that upon ourselves. And then we usually create efficiencies. I mean, we run call centers. So in Advanaclean, we had 16 reps, and we answered over 250,000 inbound customer phone calls, and we booked every appointment and scheduled every mold job and dispatched every water damage job. But if every franchise had to have a couple people answering phones, then that'd have been 400 or 500 people out there. We did it with 16, and it was more efficient. What? So it saves them that money. Wow. And so good franchising is a real partnership out there. And the other innovation from the top down is usually orderly and dumb, but innovation from the outside in is chaotic, but it's brilliant. So we also have to maintain a dialogue with the franchise owners, because candidly, they're in the front lines, and that's where some of the greatest ideas are going to come from. So we got to have this relationship equity. We got to have this trust. We got to have this this healthy tension that everybody's pushing each other just enough, but like we're not shooting at each other, and throwing rocks at each other. I mentioned McDonald's. I grew up in Chicagoland, good Catholic area, and even in our public schools back in the day, I don't know where it lands today, but who knows? But like we didn't eat meat on Fridays because during Lent, Catholics generally don't eat meat on Fridays, but it was a whole year for us. It was cheese pizza or macaroni and cheese on Friday. Well, so McDonald's on Fridays, they wouldn't do very well because they're serving hamburgers, and except one location. And they went out to this one location, and he was serving a fish sandwich, and he was crushing it. People were driving from all over the place to eat at McDonald's because he had the fish sandwich. So they took it back to, Hamburger U, and they turned it into the Filet-O-Fish sandwich, and they rolled it out to everybody. So that was an innovation from a franchisee that benefited everybody. So it's a real collaboration, and it's a nice partnership because we're writing checks as the franchisor, but the franchisee partners, they're also writing checks. So we're all in it together.
Yeah. So you were on Undercover Boss, and what role do you take on Undercover Boss?
I was me.
But I mean, like, where do they have you fit into your business?
Yeah, so very cool show. So they I had a pretty good disguise. Anybody wants to go to my LinkedIn, there's a free video. You can go to my LinkedIn, Jeff Dudan, and there's like the video right underneath there for free. You can click on it and waste 42 minutes of your life you'll never get back. But no, I mean it's so I'm in Seattle, Washington, and I'm going to be working as a mold remediator, or it was air duct cleaning tech or whatever it was. So they would throw me in on the cruise, and 4 incredible episodes, all very positive. It was very meaningful. We had great franchisees, and I just knew that we were going to find people that cared about the customers, and we did, down to a person. I got busted twice. One was an episode that didn't make the show, and one did, but yeah, it was a very positive episode. It still plays. It gets a lot of reruns, both here in the States, and also, if my direct Facebook messages from the UK suddenly tick up, I know that it played over there, something like that.
Yeah. So what were the main takeaways when you come away with, first of all, 4 episodes? It seems like when I've watched that show, you only seem to get like 1 episode per business. Is that not right? Or maybe I'd need to watch more Undercover Boss.
Yeah, usually it's they'll do 3 or 4 different employees.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll go to 3 or 4 different locations, and then at the end of it they'll cart them back out for the big reveal.
Yeah. And
you'll if you're depending on, I think if you're paying, we paid attention to what people really, really wanted. Some people are just like, I'm going to give you 20,000. I'm going to give you 30,000. I'm going to do this.
Right.
I thought I had 2 people travel with me from the company, and one guy wanted a Harley. We had a Harley dealership bring a Harley over, and another. But I mean, the best outcome on the show was a lady named Danielle, and they found people that had some real challenges in their life, spouses, no longer with us for a variety of reasons, and, special needs kid. And, she's struggling, and they're getting ready to lose their house, and just a wonderful lady. So we ended up, we hired her we gave her a job, and we gave her all the stuff that she could work remotely. So we set up her house and we put her in the call center, and she ended up being one of our top reps for years. And we paid her rent for 2 years, and they had never had a vacation. So we sent them to California for a week, her and her entire family. We were going to send them on a Disney cruise or whatever. And she's just like, we just want a van, and we want to drive the state of California together and go see anything that we want to see. I said, well, then here's all the money, and, there you go. Wow. And a couple other things that they really needed. But, that was a good outcome. And, it just, So yeah, it was, but they, I don't know, that's, people, a lot of people have seen the show. They know what it's about. It was season 8. I think episode 7 or no, I think was it the kickoff of season 8? Yeah, because we were supposed to be on the last episode of 7, and then it got pushed to the next season. So
it's got to be so rewarding. I mean, that show, I like shows that have a positive spin, because there's certainly plenty that don't these days, but that one is really good.
So I will say though,
cool.
You asked me what I got out of it. So I came back and I just sat down in my office, and we had this set of values and principles, and I think you try to do too much with them, and I just sat down, and after going, and it's like my wife came up with the design for our truck. And now you're flying all over the country, and you're seeing these trucks everywhere, and you're seeing people operating businesses with 10 or 15 or 20 employees, but just like you used to operate, and they're all over the country. And it's, we got out and around, but like going and spending the time on the job with these people, I hadn't really done that. So I sat back and I'm like, what is the real core of what we do? And I wrote the word CARES on top of it. And, I used it as an acronym for our values, which are community, accountability, respect, excellence, and service, which is servant's heart or servant leadership. And like, it just like sat down, just reflected for a minute, and that just fell out of my face right onto the paper. And we still use those values today. So that was, after that immersion experience, I was really able to kind of reflect down to the core of like, what makes great franchise systems, what makes great franchisees, what makes a difference in people's lives and their communities. And for that embodies that.
That's cool. How does somebody know if they have a business that is franchisable?
I do a lot on that. It's, generally, I mean, that's a big question, and I don't think we've got the time for the whole answer, but so first of all, it's got to be a business that's good for people. Meaning, as I talked about, you need to make it as easy as possible for these franchisees. So if you create a jet airplane of a business, then only the Top Gun pilots are going to be able to fly it, and everybody else is going to crash. So you have to create a business and business systems that 90% of the people with different levels of experience and skill sets and capitalization can be successful in, maybe at different levels, but not fail, and be so a business that's good for people. Franchise systems generally work best when there's a product or service that needs to be delivered by a human on site somewhere. So it can be a hamburger or it can be a paint job, but there needs to be, a lot of people come, I get franchise businesses every day. Somebody's like, I've got this business and I want to franchise it, right? And I've got, I do have some websites out there and stuff where people, you can go to www.dudanx.com if you want to fill out the form and tell me about your business. Just go to dudanx.com and we'll respond to you there and take a look at it. But yeah, if it's a business that could just be a direct business or can be serviced, Amazon could disrupt it, products that way, or it's just a sales rep organization. You have to really be careful about those types of businesses, because maybe they can be done much more efficiently just with technology or remote things like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, if somebody needs a fence put up or a kitchen put in or water damage, like those are the types of businesses, or a food item, those are great businesses to put the ownership mentality at the point of attack. And business franchise systems are extraordinarily resilient, because you have hundreds or thousands of families that have invested in this, and they're not going to let that ship go down.
Yeah.
So you can catch a brand, like you could get canceled today, but generally the franchise systems are pretty resilient.
One thing that you mentioned earlier, that 90% fail within 12 years, which I thought 12 years was a strange time frame. Like, it seems like if you could make it for a decade, you probably are in pretty good place. But maybe at that point you have to grow more, or what happens, after you've been going for a little while, that would make a lot of franchises fail like that?
Great question. we only get paid pennies on the dollar. So, but yet, think about all the things that I said we need to provide to be a good, responsible franchisor. It's a lot of things, and executives and people that know what they're doing, and training and technology and all of that. So to be a franchisor, you have to reach a certain number of locations open just to break even. It might be in a service business, 40 to 60 locations, and where you don't have to sell a new franchise that month to, so you don't have more month at the end of your money.
Right.
And so, and then maybe at 100 locations, you're kind of normally profitable and you've got something there. So what happens is if people get 3 or 4 or 5 franchises out there and then they're supporting them, eventually they're going to get tired. And, maybe they get up to 10 or 15 locations or 18 or 20. It's not enough to sustain. And then also, too, there's an attrition rate of about 5 to 7% of mature franchise systems. So let's say you got 20 locations. Well, 2 of them a year are going to want to sell their business because they're doing great, or stop it because it's not working for them, or they get a sick parent and they've got to relocate. There's all kinds of reasons why people can get in and out of a franchise. So if you don't have a pipeline of new candidates coming in to take those 2 that need to move on for whatever reason, then you go down to 18. So now you're going backwards. You already didn't have enough royalty income to cover. So now you're working day and night and day, you and your wife out of your bedroom trying to answer these franchisees' questions. And at the end of the day, it's a scale business. You have to reach a certain amount of scale. And if you're not going to make it I've had people... I've had people like with a pizza place, a friend of mine, and, he got to like 30 locations, and, he wasn't moving anymore, and it just, and the demands of it. And then he was trying to deal with all the franchisees, and one day he just said, you all go do whatever you want. You don't pay me any more money. You can use the name. I'm out of here. He just left. He just said, you guys do whatever you want to do, deal directly with the suppliers and all of that. Because, at some point, he just knew that he just wasn't going to get there, that he had tied himself to help these people, and but he wasn't ever going to, he didn't feel like he was going to be able to get to that number of locations that would make it profitable, and that because it costs money to provide the support that these people need,
right?
And you owe it to them, and you've got to either be willing to write the check early. And you got to be willing to write the check until such time that you have enough fees coming in to, that it kind of balances out there. So
it's interesting because that, you would think, or from the outside looking in, if you got 30 locations, it seems like you're killing it.
Well, it depends on the AUV, right? So if you've got 30 like large footprint wing stops and they're doing $3 to $4 million a piece, you got $100 million business there. You're fine. If you've got 30 painting guys that are doing $500,000 a piece, and then you're getting, 6 cents on the dollar, 7 cents on the dollar, something like that, plus your other fees, and you've got to have 5 or 6 people helping these people, then it gets a little tight there. So it's just a lot of it has to do with, how much revenue is in each location. So
yeah. I've, seen people try to franchise fishing.
Yeah.
Seems hard.
Yeah.
I don't know.
How's that going?
Seems really hard.
I think I know what you're talking about.
I haven't. I don't know. I've seen it in freshwater and saltwater, and I have no idea how it's going. But we have been approached. Like, you got a good brand, you could do a franchise, and we didn't go down that road because I just thought it sounded really hard. Like I just sounded really hard to me. But I don't know. Maybe it was a missed opportunity. You never know.
Yeah. Would you do the guiding? I could, we could run that out and see, but, you would have to, again, based on what I just said, you would have to, you got a great brand, you got a lot of reach, you got licensing deals, you got sponsorships, you got lots of ways to monetize what you're doing. You got television. But it's franchising, I think works really well in certain situations.
Yeah.
But not every situation.
Yeah, well, that's obvious. I mean, because some make it and some don't, but some are really great. I don't know if you're comfortable naming names, but is there one franchise that sticks out that seems to be the best that people would recognize the name?
Well, I mean, Chick-fil-A.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
But it's kind of a franchise, non-franchise. And I mean, their standards are so high. People wait for 5 years to get an opportunity for a Chick-fil-A. Then they go work in a store for 6 months. They work every position in there. Then they go sit by the phone. And look, don't sue me, Chick-fil-A, if this is wrong, but it's close enough. So then they go sit by the phone and they get a call and they say, all right, we're offering you a location. It's one of these three spots. You got to go there and you got to tell us right away. And I think you only pay, and again, this is information, it might be outdated, but you pay $5,000, but you don't own the location. You don't own the real estate. It's a profit share. It's a partnership. You do very well, but then you don't build equity because when you're done with the arrangement, you give it back to them. Mm-hmm. So they have extraordinarily high standards, extraordinarily high guardrails, extraordinarily long and arduous process on the front end, and very, very few people get through and actually get a store. And I had Fred Reichheld on my podcast. He's a Bain consultant for 40 years. He invented the Net Promoter Score. And the Net Promoter Score is, would you recommend this business to a friend or family? And he worked with Chick-fil-A early with Truett Cathy. And he said people think Chick-fil-A is closed on Sunday for religious reasons. It's not. It was because they didn't want the Chick-fil-A to operate without their operating partner to be on location. And we need to close one day a week to give them a day off. And Sunday seems like the day to do it. And that went viral. That was a soundbite that he shared. So, their standards are so high and so exacting that. But in most franchises, you build equity. So in our franchises, the franchise owner pays a relatively small fee. They go work really hard. They build a great business. 7, 8, 9, 10 years down the road, they sell it. Well, they get the money for that business. Mm-hmm. And it could be a multi-million-dollar business, and it could be a multi-million-dollar payout. They get the money. We get a $10,000 transfer fee. Now we got a new franchisee, but the business continues from that point. So it's
interesting. I'm sure there's tons of different ways that it all works, but I've always just kind of looked from the outside in and just wondering how that works. I'm sure other people have too. So hopefully this was helpful to anybody that had any questions about it. But we should definitely check you out on Undercover Boss season 8, episode 1 through 4, I think. But Jeff, I appreciate you coming on. I hope we can fish one day together when you're down in Marathon. That would be fun. How do people get in touch with you? Or do you do coaching? Like, is that part of what you're doing, or you're kind of coaching your franchise or franchisees?
Yeah. I mean, I do coaching. Of course, I work on a regular basis in lots of different touch points with all of our Homefront Brands franchisees. But if somebody has a brand that they might want to franchise, or they have questions, I take tons of calls like that just to give people feedback. I like to talk to people. So you can go to www.dudanx.com, fill out a form there. But for anything that we've got at Homefront Brands, just go to homefrontbrands.com. You can follow me on LinkedIn, just Jeff Dudan, Dudan, Instagram, Jeff Dudan. If you want a free copy of my book, Discernment, I'd be happy to email that to you. All you do is go to my Instagram, click on the link, fill out a short form with your email and your phone number, and you will immediately get a copy of Discernment back to you. If you like the book, then you can go to Amazon and pick it up there. Not a lot of dollars. And those are the best ways to get in touch with me, whether it be LinkedIn, Instagram, or just fill out a form on homefrontbrands.com if you want more information about any of our brands.
Right on. All right, Jeff, thanks, man. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you having me on your show. You can also hear that show. I don't know when that's going to air or what, but what's the podcast called? Homefront Podcast?
Yep, On the Homefront with Jeff Dudan. It's really great. A lot of entrepreneurs, and a lot of great stories on there. A wide variety. We've got celebrity chefs and all kinds of people. We got bachelors on there, ex-bachelors, and so it's an eclectic group. But it all seems to run down a similar theme of people that are up to something and going somewhere, talking about cool things. So it's On the Home Front with Jeff Dudan. You get on Apple is our biggest platform, but also on Spotify and of course on YouTube. If you just have to look at this face.
All right. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate getting to know you a little bit better. I certainly appreciate you having me on your podcast. And go check him out and see what he's got. Especially if you're interested in franchising, but also you might see him in marathon fishing.
Yeah. Well, can I go to your website and book a charter with you? Are you still doing that?
Not really.
Well,
but we can figure out a time that we can get together.
I think that sounds great, Tom. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. See ya.
See ya.